He was walking down the quieter end of La Brea, just past the used tire shop and the smoke-dimmed window of a boarded-up barber, eating a turkey sandwich he'd bought with the last $8 in his wallet. A soft, mealy thing from a gas station cooler that smelled faintly of plastic and mustard. And he was chewing it slowly, not really tasting it, just feeding a habit. When he noticed the man on the curb, thin, gray-stubbled, face like dried leather, wrapped in layers of stained fleece, and a military surplus jacket 2 sizes too big, one boot missing its sole, the other held together with duct tape, sitting cross-legged with a cardboard sign that said simply, "Hungry," and nothing more. Not even a plea, just a flat, exhausted fact. And the veteran, whose name wasn't important to most people anymore, but who'd once been shouted by sergeants and whispered by doctors, stopped walking without fully meaning to, because something in the man's quiet, unmoving presence clipped into his brain and refused to be ignored. Maybe it was the way he didn't call out, didn't shake a cup or extend a hand, just sat there like he was waiting to dissolve into the sidewalk. And without thinking much about it, the veteran turned back, looked at the sandwich in his hand, 2 bites taken, edges drying in the sun, and walked over, crouched down, and handed it to the man, who blinked up at him in slow motion like he wasn't sure what was happening. Like the world was out of sync and took it with hands that trembled just a little, the fingers almost too dirty to see the skin beneath. And the veteran, still squatting beside him, just nodded and said, "You need it more than I do," which wasn't meant to be poetic, just a plain truth. And he stood to leave, thinking that was it, just a moment, one of 100 small kindnesses that no one notices. But then the man tugged his sleeve, soft and unsure, and asked if maybe he could pay him back somehow. And the veteran smiled, said, "No need, brother," and started to walk away again, not expecting anyone to be watching, not expecting anything at all, really. But across the street, near the valet stand of a steakhouse, where even lunch cost more than his monthly pension, a man in a navy suit and polished loafers had been leaning against a black Escalade, idly scrolling through his phone, waiting for someone or something, and had caught the whole thing in the corner of his eye. He'd seen the sandwich, the offer, the gesture that cost more than it looked, and now his eyes were locked on the veteran as he walked away, slow, calm, unaware, and the man in the suit stepped off the curb with an odd urgency, calling out as he crossed the street. Something in his tone caught between admiration and curiosity, something unfinished, as if the real story hadn't even started yet, and maybe he was right. Maybe everything up to that moment had just been the prelude. The veteran hesitated only briefly before crouching again beside the man on the curb, his knees cracking softly as he lowered himself, then held out the sandwich, 2 bites taken, corners still pressed together like a wrapped gift, placing it carefully in the man's lap without ceremony, without waiting for thanks, just doing it like a muscle memory, like tying a boot or packing a rucksack. And for a few seconds, neither of them said anything, just sat in the thick California air that smelled faintly of gasoline and distant jasmine. And then the man looked down at the sandwich, then up again, eyes glassy, blinking like he hadn't seen real kindness in a long time, maybe longer than he could remember. And with a voice dry and cracked like a torn speaker, he said, "You sure?" And the veteran just gave a short, quiet nod, saying, "You need to eat." Nothing more. No explanation. No big speech. Because it wasn't charity. It wasn't some grand moral gesture. It was survival. One person recognizing hunger in another. And that should have been the end of it. Just a simple exchange. Something small and human and easily forgotten. But across the street, the man in the navy suit had seen the whole thing while checking his phone and pretending not to be bored, waiting for a client who was late for lunch. His sunglasses still on despite the clouds, his shoes buffed to a shine that looked sprayed on, the kind of guy who always seemed to be stepping out of a commercial. Someone polished, but not necessarily unkind. And when he saw the veteran stand up and dust his hands on his jeans, he stepped off the sidewalk and started toward them, with a pace just a bit too deliberate to be casual. Crossing the street without looking at the light, his jacket flaring slightly as he moved. And when he got close enough to speak, he gave a half laugh, half comment, like someone nudging their way into a private conversation, saying, "Wow, that was something." And both the veteran and the man on the ground looked up, slightly startled, unsure what kind of comment it was, sarcastic, curious, or genuinely impressed. But the man in the suit smiled quickly, as if to disarm them, and reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek black money clip and removing a folded bill, crisp and green, which he handed not to the veteran but to the man on the curb, saying, "Here, get yourself something better than half a sandwich." And the man took it slowly, eyes darting, lips moving like he was trying to count the zeros just to be sure. And when he saw it was a $100 bill, he froze, the way people do when they're afraid even hope might be some kind of trick. And the veteran just nodded at him again and was about to turn away when the man in the suit said, Wait, can I talk to you for a second?" And there was something in his tone that wasn't quite casual, something expectant, like he'd been looking for a reason to stop someone, anyone, from drifting past unnoticed. And the veteran, unsure but polite, said, "Sure," and followed him a few steps away from the curb, back toward the sidewalk in front of a boarded-up dry cleaner. And now the man turned to face him more directly, arms crossed, scanning his face like trying to match it to a memory or a headline, and said, "I've seen you before, haven't I?" What's your name again?" And the veteran gave his name quietly, expecting the usual blank nod. But the man snapped his fingers, said, "Yes, yes, that's it. You were in that movie? God, what was it? Something with desert scenes? Marines?" And the veteran gave the smallest shrug, the kind that meant yes, but also meant let's not make a big deal out of it. And the man nodded. Like that confirmed everything he needed to know. Like suddenly the story made sense now. The act of kindness became a headline, and he said, "Look, I'm not trying to make this weird, but I like what you did there. It's rare, you know. Everyone talks about doing good, but almost no one actually does it." And then he paused, as if calculating something in his head. Maybe numbers, maybe a decision. Then said, "Can I buy you a coffee? Or, hell, let's take a walk." And the veteran hesitated again, wary by instinct, but nodded, curiosity edging out caution. And they started down the street together, their footsteps uneven, one polished, one scuffed. And as they moved away, the man on the curb stared after them, still clutching the sandwich in one hand and the $100 bill in the other, as if unsure which one he should eat first. And traffic passed and horns beeped and the moment slipped from the street's attention as quickly as it had appeared. But for the two men walking now in mismatched silence, something unsaid hung heavy between them. A question neither had yet asked, a direction not yet revealed, and even though neither of them said it, it was clear that something bigger was coming. The man in the navy suit stopped walking, turning fully to face the veteran under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, his expensive shoes tapping lightly on the cracked pavement. And with a measured calmness that somehow carried an unexpected warmth, he said, "Look, I have more money than I know what to do with, more than any one person really needs. But what caught my attention was not just the act itself, it was the quiet way you did it. No fanfare, no need for recognition, just a simple, honest thing that most people seem to have forgotten how to do." And the veteran, who had spent years navigating far harsher landscapes, listening to orders and witnessing things he'd rather forget, felt a weight in his chest loosen slightly, as if the man's words were a balm, applied not with hands, but with intention. And the man continued, "I like to help people, to make a difference when I can, but I also appreciate when kindness comes without strings attached, without asking for anything in return. And that's why I want to give you this." And from the inner pocket of his tailored jacket, he produced an envelope thick enough to suggest more than just paper and handed it over with a quiet finality. $5,000, use it however you need. And the veteran's hands trembled as he took the envelope, the simple gesture breaking something loose inside him, a mix of disbelief and relief swirling until the dam he had built for so long cracked, and tears, unbidden and sharp, spilled down his cheeks, catching the weak light like fragments of something fragile and human. And for a moment neither man spoke, the silence filled only with the distant hum of the city and the faint rustling of a breeze, teasing the edges of discarded newspapers and forgotten dreams, before the veteran wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, voice rough but steady as he said, "My grandson, he's been trying to pay for college on his own, working 2 jobs, but it's not enough. Tuition keeps going up, and I didn't want to burden him anymore, but now, with this, His eyes searched the man's face. Gratitude mingled with a quiet pride. I can help him finish school. That's something real I can give him. A chance to not struggle like I did, to find a better path. And the man nodded slowly, understanding more in those few words than any check or charity could convey, then extended his hand firmly, the kind of handshake that bridges two worlds, one built on hardship and service, the other on opportunity and means. And as they clasped hands, a mutual respect settled between them, unspoken but solid, like an unbreakable thread. And as they parted ways that evening, the veteran feeling the weight of possibility in his pocket and the hope of a future he hadn't dared imagine, and the rich man disappearing into the shadowed streets with a rare satisfaction, both men carried with them a story unfinished, a quiet reminder that sometimes, in the smallest moments of connection, the hardest battles are won not with weapons or words, but with a shared humanity that neither wealth nor status can buy.